and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. In this video we're going to be starting a brand new series, and we're going to be painting a snail on a toadstool. If you want to follow along traditionally, acrylics and watercolor would probably be best for this painting. You can do the background with watercolor and then paint over the top with acrylics. That would give you a real translucent background look for this painting. I use a 2-inch flat wash, a number 10 bristle brush, a number 8 filbert brush, a number 10 flat brush, a number 6 flat brush, a long script brush, and a short script brush. You can also use a small round brush instead of the short script brush. Here's the canvas that I use. You can also use watercolor paper if you want to. Here are the colors that I use. And I usually use Grumbacher Academy. And here are the watercolors that you can use. You can use whatever brand that you like. There's tons of different kinds of brands. Now the app that we're going to be using today is ArtRage for Android. And it's an awful lot like the desktop version, but it doesn't have as many tools. It has the basic brushes, and it has a few functions like the layer functions. It has quite a few of those, and it has reference photo functions and trace and several different things like that. But it doesn't have things like a straight line tool or some of the more complex brushes that they have in the desktop version. But it gets the job done, and it does very well mimicking traditional media on your Android tablet. So here I'm going to just go ahead and do the background, and I want it to kind of have a translucent look, sort of like watercolor. So I'm using some of the watercolor brushes, and then I'm using the blending brushes, and the frost brushes work pretty well, and also the harsh chaos brush works well. We just kind of want to give it a translucent background look. And you can do this if you're following along traditionally, and if you're using watercolor paper or watercolor canvas, you can just go ahead and use your watercolors to do this background. Now you can do this with acrylics if you want to, and just thin the water down. You know, use the water to thin your paint down really well. And that will also give you a translucent look. And so I'm just continuing on throwing different colors into this. I want kind of purplish grays, pinkish colors, and aqua colors, light blues for this. Just kind of like the photo reference that I have there. I got these off pixabay.com, where you can get royalty-free photos and use them for references. And I just kind of want a colorful background that sort of suggests maybe plants and flowers behind the mushrooms. So I'm just adding different colors of green and purples, and if you're following along with acrylics, you'd use dioxazine purple, maybe throw in some ultramarine blue with white, and just a whole bunch of different colors. Hooker's green, throw in some white, mix your colors together to kind of get purple colors. You can use some of the rose colors. Liquitex Acrylics has some rose colors for their acrylics, and you can use that since I use Liquitex as well. And also I'd like to mention that a new group that I've been using are the Arteza acrylics, and they work really nicely too, and they're also very affordable. So here I've got the background going, and I'm just kind of smoothing out a little bit, and I'm just kind of painting around the sketch. And so if you want to do this like watercolor, you can just paint around the sketch. If you're going to use acrylics, it doesn't matter. You can kind of just go over it if you want to, but it kind of gives you an idea of what you have drawn there, and you don't get lost and you don't cover up your sketch. So I'm just kind of leaving it blank. And just kind of extending the background down a little bit here. And again, I'm just using a combination of the watercolor brushes in ArtRage and the blending brushes. And that just kind of gives you a real translucent watercolor look. And then I want to go ahead and switch to the oil or acrylic brushes in ArtRage. And I'm just kind of doing the background for the mushroom, and it's kind of a light orange color here. If you're following along traditionally, probably cadmium orange with a lot of white acrylic gesso. If you're using acrylics, and it just depends on what your colors are and what brand you have for watercolors. But we want kind of just a light orange. And probably I would just switch to acrylics at this point, but you can do this with watercolor as well. Here I'm adding some purple to the top and blending it in, throwing in some oranges and sort of a burnt sienna color as well on the bottom of the mushroom, just trying to get the colors of the mushroom for my photo reference. And also, I would remind everybody to save frequently in ArtRage, because occasionally it does crash and you lose your work. So do save frequently in this program as well. And then I'm putting in some of the grass at the bottom, and I'm using the oil brush category again. And I like to use the ones that sort of simulate dry brush. Kind of a dry brush look here. And just go ahead and use your, probably number 6 flat brush or number 6 filbert or something. If you're following along with acrylics, you just kind of want to get a dry brush look at the end of your grass here. And you can add different colors of green, add dark greens and light greens to this. We just kind of want to get a little bit of depth added to the grass here, and you can throw in even yellows and orange if you want to kind of give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of variation. And then I'm just kind of smudging in the colors here with Hard Out Smudge. That's my favorite smudging brush in ArtRage, and it works fairly well for smoothing everything up. And I'm just kind of trying to get the texture of the toadstools right now. And again, I have to save it just because I don't want to lose work, because I have lost work occasionally when this crashes. And here I'm going to work on the snail, and I'm still using oil brush. Everlasting oil is good, or the round brush works fairly well. And I'm just kind of using a darker yellow ochre, maybe a raw sienna type color here, and then a more orange color for the body of the snail. And I just kind of want to make it look like he's crawling on top of the toadstool. And then I'm just kind of working on the texture of the shell there. You can blend it out. And I'm putting a highlight on the edges because you can see that the light is being reflected on the edge of the snail. And I'm adding a little bit of lighter orange to the body because it kind of looks translucent. And that's because snail bodies they look that way, and the light can shine through them sometimes. And so I'm just kind of trying to get that translucent look that the body has on my photo reference for the snail. And then I'm drawing his antenna there, and just trying to kind of work on the tail and get the proper shape of the tail. Then I'm adding a little bit more detail here on the shell here. And if you're following along traditionally, you can use a script brush or a small number 3 round, just kind of working with a small brush to get some details here. And then I want to add a little bit of darker details to the under part of the toadstool, the cap, I guess you would call it, and add a little bit of a jagged look to the edge of it, because that's kind of the way the toadstools look. They have jagged edges. They're not real smooth. And then add a little bit of a shadow underneath the cap of the toadstool. And I'm using a darker brown, probably burnt umber would work well if you're using acrylics. Throw in a little bit of burnt sienna, and then here I'm using the gloop brush. If you ever wondered what the gloop brush in ArtRage is good for, it does really neat special effects, and it makes the really neat splotches on the toadstool cap. And so I'm using it for that, and then kind of smudging it out and making it look a little bit softer. So this is the end of part 1 of my Snail on Toadstool series. And in part 2, we're going to go ahead and work more on the details of the snail and the mushroom and a little bit on the grass. If you want to see the next video, then hit the subscribe button. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.